Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is Take 5 with Steven Travers. And Steven, today we've got a guest with us who is from Havana, Cuba, but he's a major league pitcher. I know that the two of you are going to talk about pitching and strategy, and I probably won't get a word in edgewise. But looking forward to today's guest. It's Vladimir Núñez out of Havana, Cuba. And 10 years in the big leagues, he obviously had some smoke that he was throwing back in the day. But this is going to be a very different perspective. Most of the guys that you bring in, Steven, we've had an umpire, we've had a lot of infielders and, everyday players, but now we get a chance to finally talk one-on-one with some pitchers.
Well, it's a real pleasure for me to have Vladimir Núñez with us, and the Cuban element is really interesting to me. Being a baseball fan and a historian, and an ex-professional player myself, I never played with any Cubans. By the time I came along, there were lots and lots of Dominicans, but not Cubans, and it was a real shame because we knew that they were great ball players because they had been in the major leagues since the 1920s or 30s, and there were a lot of great ball players. And then there were still some great ball players who were still coming from Cuba: Camilo Pascual, Luis Tiant, Tony Oliva, and others. And I grew up watching these guys. So I was very glad to see the Cubans return to Major League Baseball some 20, 25 years ago, maybe a little more. And so it's great that we have Vladimir on today. I'm really looking forward to this.
Well, Vladimir, before we introduce you real quick, Steven, explain in this picture who everybody is in case the gray hair gets in the way of what we remember.
Well, this picture is taken at Fenway Park. And on the left is Mrs. Diana Lee. Next to her is the great Bill Spaceman Lee, who is a very good friend of mine. Then next to him is his former teammate and, gosh, maybe the greatest Cuban player of all time, really should be in the Hall of Fame, which I said to him at the time, the great Luis Tiant, who's not with us anymore. And then wearing the kind of the Hawaiian shirt is me. I'm just happy as a camper to be there. This is a $16,000 a night luxury suite at Fenway Park. And what the Red Sox do is they bring in legends. In this case, it was Bill Lee and Luis Tiant. It could be Fred Lynn and Jim Rice, or it could be whoever, Nomar Garciaparra. And they pay them to be in these suites, and whoever is paying for the suite, in this case, that particular night, it was a wealthy guy and his wife and his son and his son's travel ball team. And it was a $16,000 evening, and these kids had a blast, and they're all hanging around with Luis Tiant and Bill Lee. And of course, the parents have the opportunity to spend 9 innings just talking to these guys. And I was just lucky enough to be there because I was with Bill. And my gosh, what a night that was. So, and I said to Louis, Louis, you should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And he said, you're going to have to excuse my accent. I'm going to do the best Luis Tiant. He goes, yeah, but at least I'm not in Castro's Cuba. So it was a great night. Also, Louis' wife was there. She's not in the photo, but a wonderful lady. But it was a great day.
Well, Vladimir, when you grew up, was Luis Tiant the man? I know in '75 during the World Series when he's spinning and pirouetting and doing all those things against the Cincinnati Reds, he became a favorite of mine. What about you?
Well, I mean, so growing up, I heard about it. I heard about it, and then I watched a few videos here and there. But what kept me interested in watch him, it was his delivery. It was his mechanic. And if you can see throughout the years, you can see multiple pitchers that have the same characteristic. So if you remember Orlando Hernandez,
yeah,
all right, and then
talk about him.
If you remember the same characteristics from the Dominican Marichal,
yeah,
right, and then after that, which is trying to imitate a little bit about their leg kick, and then remember that we have Dontrell Willis from the left side.
Yes.
with the same characteristics. So that's something that caught my attention, when I was in my youth years. And I say, I maybe can try a pitch like that. And then too high would not work for me. So I find a midpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you were born in March of 75, so I mistakenly need to correct myself. That World Series, you were only about 5 or 6 months old. But some of the players that came out, you grew up in Havana, just outside of that. Let's talk early baseball for you. When's the first time you picked up a glove and realized that, man, this is so much fun. I enjoy playing this game, and I really want to do it again tomorrow?
Well, for me, it was like my mother was very protective of myself because at a young age, I was getting sick a lot because Cuba is very humid and it rains a lot. So my mother was protective of myself. I remember growing up, she only allowed me to go play some baseball in front of the house on the streets with the boys. And then, one day I was 10 years old. It was a guy that walked by and then he stopped me and he goes like, "Hey, you look like you can throw the ball a little bit." And I said, "Nah, I'm just having fun." They say, "Oh, can I talk to your mother?" And I say, "Yeah, I live in that house over there. You can go and talk to her." And my dad is not home yet. My dad's getting home at 6 o'clock. And then he went over there and tried to talk to my mom. And then he come back later and tried to talk to my dad and say, "Hey, well, is there any way we can take him to the local academy and introduce him to the group to see if he can fit in, to see if he can adapt himself into the program." So a couple days later, I got picked up from school, and then they take me to the baseball field for the first time. So I went over there. I can totally got impressed by the discipline because everybody had to get in line, everybody has to stretch, and everybody had to listen to the coach. So I follow along with that. And then I take any position that they give me at that time. So I remember they throw me to right field and they say, "Okay, go out there and catch some fly balls and then catch some ground balls." And then as the day goes by, they move me down to play some first base. And then after that, they put me in third base. And to probably about a couple months later that I make the local team. And then after I make the local team, and we play a good competition, but somehow I developed kind of fast that I become one of the like main guys of that group. Later they have like a conversation with me and they say, "Is there any way we can try to make you as a pitcher?" They start teaching me how to pitch and this and that. The following season, I become the number one pitcher on that team and the third batter of the team. So kind of like immediately I take over to be the leader of the team.
Wow.
So I guess it was a blessing in there that my family doesn't know. And story short, so 11 years old, I play on the local team, and then I play in the state team. And then after that, I play into the national team.
Wow.
The national team, there's like on Cuba tournaments. And then I got selected into the pre-selection to make the Cuban national team at the age 11.
All in a year from you're not playing at all, any organized. Mom says no, and then within 12 months you're playing on the national team?
Yeah, literally, yeah. And
Wow.
12 months, I was like in already making the national team, Team Cuba 11U, going to 12U.
Yes.
And then
Okay.
we were going to travel to Japan. So they need to go to my house and ask my mom for permissions and this and that, if I had to take any medication. And then I got to go into a long spring training in the capital city in Havana. There was like 35 men. They were eliminating guys, kind of like a spring training here. They were eliminating guys every week until we got the 22 or 24 men roster to travel. And from now on, it's just everything just take off. I make the national team in 12U and then 13U and then 14U. So now when I'm in 14U, I already make the team for the adult like for the adult league.
Okay.
You know, like where like the big guys.
Yeah.
And 14U. So I play on that.
You can't shave yet, and you're with guys that are drinking, right?
Yes. So I'm already on that team. And I make that team from 14, 15U until like 17U. So I was part of the national team from that period of time. And then that's when I get a taste of go multiple countries and play in different like events, right?
Right.
And then now I starting listening, I starting watching, and I starting comparing like the baseball in Cuba, the baseball in different countries, and that's when I started hearing, oh, it's professional baseball in the United States, and so. So that's when I had to mature very early and say, okay, I want to play in the major leagues. I want to get a taste of what does that look like because I already play at the highest level in my country. You know what I mean? See, here we go, 1994. I was a young man right there with the
You're
monster.
19. You're about 19 years old in this picture. Is that about right?
No, a little early, little less.
You're younger?
Okay. Nice mustache.
I turned 19 in 1995, 96. So I was younger than that. So in that picture, that's the first time with a Canadian company allows to go to Cuba and take pictures of the baseball player by region. All right. And it was like a selected teams. There was like 8 teams only. And I was part of that. I was part of those teams. And then we play a series of maybe like 50 games. And after that, you go to the pre-selection to make Team Cuba. That's how it goes. But I was like, at that time, I developed really fast. So I was a faster thrower. No more hitting, no more playing position. I was just a pitcher only.
Wow.
If you can see there, they're probably gonna say, you know, how fast my fastball was. They got all my numbers in there. 1993, 94. Yeah, I was a young guy.
Vladimir, let me ask you a question. In the United States, we start Little League. Well, we actually start. I did when I was playing. Little League started at age 8. I think now they have T-ball, but it was a Little League field. The mound is 46 feet from home plate. It's a shorter distance. The fences are not as far. When you get to be 13, you go in. Well, there's different leagues. In my case, it was called Babe Ruth League Baseball. That's when you went to a major league diamond, 60 feet 6 inches from the mound. When you first started playing at age 11, which in the United States, you'd be in Little League pitching off a 46 foot mound. Were you playing on a big league diamond or a Little League diamond?
No, this is what happened. This is the difference. They always teach us to throw our bullpens and to stretch out our arms from a far distance. So I got used to throw my bullpens and then throw to a catcher from 60 feet.
Yeah.
Wow.
Since I was younger, because they don't have a rubber to move it in.
Yeah.
They don't have like a portable mound. They can move it forward.
Mm-hmm.
So we always pitch from the back.
Yeah.
You know, we always pitch from the back. Even at practice, even during the bullpen session. So it was normal for me to get the ball to the catcher. So now when the tournament comes at a young age, what they do is they draw a circle and they put a mark on the ground and they say, okay, you got to pitch from there. So now when you pitch from there, it was easier.
Mm-hmm.
It was easier.
You're flat though, right? You're not on a mound. You're at the same level as the batter and everything.
Yeah, all the used years, the pitching mound, it was kind of like it was flat.
Yeah,
but it was close. It was close. It was easy. So making that transitions, it was not a problem at all.
Vladimir, if you don't mind me asking, what did you play before baseball to where you were so athletic? Was it soccer? Did you have Teofilo Stevens was the great boxer in Cuba? What were the sports that you got involved in before baseball?
Well, I like to ride a bike a lot.
Okay.
You know, I like to ride a bike a lot. And then someone tell me that I need to start running track, you know, to start running track so I can develop my lungs because I was asthmatic. That's why I say that I get sick a lot. So
Okay.
I started running a lot to develop my lungs and to get oxygen in my body. And that is what helps me to become an athlete. That I get to a point that running 10 laps, it was nothing for me.
Right. And then you use that athleticism to quickly learn right field, first base, third base, and then eventually on the mound, you learn the footwork afterwards, but you already had the conditioning to be able to compete with anybody, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is what I learned. This is a learning experience from being in the game for a long time. I remember when somebody asked me maybe like 10 years ago, oh no, I don't want to work with this young man right now because your distance is not 60 feet. And I said, let me tell you something. If a player can throw a strike from 40 feet, right? Why do you ask him for 40 feet? It's better to move it back, to learn how to throw that ball in the perfect lane or whatever, and then you move it forward.
Yeah.
But
I
when you asking for a specific distance and you never move the player back, you know, it's very difficult. That's why I'm bigger on long toss. You want to develop your arm? Don't stay at 40 feet all day. And stretch him out, that arm. You got to stretch your arm out, and then you bringing in, and then you will adjust. That's my perspective.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
A lot of guys don't know how to do that, or they just, you see a lot of arm injuries. When you started throwing as much as you did in 14, 17, 19 years old during the early part of your career, Steven, I'm not sure about you, but ice, that's about the only thing that they ever told any of us to do. What were some of the training methods that you had? Be as a PO, right? You're basically a pitcher only. They took you out of the infield and they put you on the mound. So what were your responsibilities and all these folks on the national team that are teaching you and they're prepping you for how to be the best pitcher you can be?
You asking me?
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What were
Okay.
some of the techniques that you used that were taught down for you specifically in terms of your arm strength and in your arm maintenance?
Well, it's like a progressive throwing, right? A lot of parents now these days they want to take these young guys and they want to play catch 40 feet, 45 feet every day, 50 feet every day, and then later you're asking yourself, well, why my son's arm is not developing?
Yeah.
Well, you got to do a progressive throwing. I mean, it's like you throw 40 feet today, the next day you go to 50 feet, and the next day you push it back to 90, and then in the middle of the week you just stretch them out all the way to 120 and 140, and then as the week goes on, and then you bring it back to 90, and then you bring it back to 60, and then that's how you develop. So I remember that I cannot even throw a baseball to 90 feet, but I challenged myself to long toss the ball from foul pole to foul pole. And then someone comes one day and say, you want to build strength on your arm? You need to start long tossing a softball. Because you know what I mean? Your arm get used to something bigger and something a little heavier. So when you get something light,
Tom House advocates throwing footballs.
Yeah, and then like it's a lot of players right now in the major leagues. They're doing the warm-ups with the football before they go in the bullpen and they're starting playing catch with the catcher before they go in the game.
Yeah.
And then that's how I develop my arm faster. And then I'm just telling you right now, it's a change that can literally come overnight.
Yeah.
Well, you said a few moments ago, you spoke about, you didn't even know about, higher end baseball. You go from a local team to a state team to a national team. And then you hear guys overseas when you're talking about the major leagues and all that. Somewhere in there, it began to click for you. You said you started maturing very quickly. And that's what really, really entered you. The dream or the reality of the dream of being able to play and developing a goal for yourself. There was a desire, obviously, very hungry for you to want to learn quickly and do it better than anybody else.
Yeah, so I'm gonna add another thing. That's part of the developing process for a baseball player. When you tell somebody play cash, you literally tell that person or tell that player to just go on cruise control. But when you tell somebody throw the ball through me, that's different.
Yes, it is.
That's why you have a lot of pitchers out there. They have problems with command because they want to place it or they want to play catch with the catcher. No, you got to throw the baseball. You got to throw the baseball through the catcher, and you will miss less. When you aim, you miss a lot.
Yep.
Oh, sure.
When you throwing, you hit your target. Do you see any outfielders aiming?
No.
They don't aim.
No.
Yeah.
They just throw. So while you're in the short distance, you start aiming. That's why you got to do your long toss so you can get all that fear, all that reserve, all that stuff. Get all that out of you. Throw the baseball, and then now it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
And that's what changed for me. That's literally what changed for me.
Yeah. Here's another. I know you coach, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But when I was coaching my sons, and I told the kids to go warm up either on the right or the left field line, depending on what dugout we were in. When they started backing up and doing long toss, I made one simple statement. I said, the ball doesn't hit the ground or else you're going to run. And it was amazing to me to see how many kids, when they start throwing at a longer distance, their accuracy just goes out the window and they're all chasing after the baseball. And that just bothered me deeply because the other team is watching. And if you can't play catch at 50, 100, 120, 160 feet without dropping the ball or throwing it all over the place, you're going to look sloppy and you're going to play sloppy. At least that's in my opinion. So learning to do it and do it correctly, obviously at a higher level, that was a real impact for you.
Yep.
Vladimir, I'm curious about your name. Is that a common name in Cuba? I know that there's Vladimir Guerrero. Is that a common name in Cuba? Where did that come from?
Well, that's the question that I asked my mom when I was more mature, and I say, "Why do you name me Vladimir?" And then she literally said, "If you think about it, the 80% of the population in Cuba, they have Russian's name."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, "Oh, okay." And now the golden base of the alliance, the Cuba has with Russia, back in the days, everybody started naming their child with Russian names. Like even my sister's name is very complicated too. And then that was the explanation. And I say, okay, that we have some monuments and stuff like that in Cuba with Russian names, and then everybody was looking out to, I don't know if it was a president, I don't know if it was like a candidate to the presidency in Russia, but it was like Vladimir Ilyich Lenin.
Yeah.
And then
V.I. Lenin was the founder of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, something like that. So everybody was like looking out.
I think that probably was the answer to that, but I wasn't sure whether maybe there was a movie star or some pop star who had that name. But I do see that it's not an unusual name in Cuba or the Dominican Republic. There are a number of players and people from that part of the world named Vladimir.
Yeah, and there was institutions too. You know, we have multiple institutions in the country with Russian names.
That's interesting. Yeah,
because they were, they were sending to Cuba, you know what I mean, buses and automobile and this and that, and they were changing. They were giving the country bikes for the population, and then a lot of stuff. Some of the food that came from them too. With the Russian names and stuff like that, we can't read what that is, and then on and on. So that's literally.
Let me ask you this, because you were it sounds to me like the culture of baseball in Cuba, especially then, was to identify, and this is seen in a lot of countries where great athletes are identified at a very young age and they're brought in and they're put in these academies, which is we don't do that in the United States, not in baseball. You have Little League or you have Pop Warner or you play CYO basketball, and you leave it up to local schools and local groups. But in your case, it's more of an academy with a nationalistic fervor or a nationalistic flavor to it. But I wonder, because there are a lot of great athletes who are late bloomers, and scouts will look at, say, a 16 or 17-year-old high school kid who's maybe not that great in high school, but they'll say, that kid is going to grow into his body and he's going to get better and he's probably going to reach his peak when he's about 21 or 22, which is really when you want to reach your peak. So I wonder, was there more of a directive towards the younger players, and were there older players who might have missed the boat a little bit because they didn't get in at the ground floor? Or was there a position to identify, say, a 15 or 16 or 17-year-old kid who might not have been that good when he was 11 or 12, but he's starting to develop and they see a future for him? Is that part of the scouting process in Cuba?
Wait, so this is where the difference take place. When I get to the league in Cuba, right? And I'm like 15, 16. I got teammates on my team that are like 35, 38, 40, and they still play good baseball, right? So this is how they break it down over there. So they have these institution schools for all sports at different age. So when I was 12, I got to take over from my small town into a different town, into an internal school that you have to go from Monday to Friday. And then you go to school in the morning and you got baseball in the afternoon, Monday to Friday. From there, I got selected into a higher school. I went from 9th grade into 12th grade. And it was the same, but it's a little superior. So it's like the athletes are much better on all sports. And then from when I was in that school, I remember I went 9th grade, 10th grade. So before I finished 10th grade, I got picked up, and then I went into a national school in Havana where are the top of the athletes in the country are there, the best of the best. We got fit difference, we train difference, everything was different. But now when you are on Cuban national teams, or when you are on teams, your teammate can be 5, 6 years older than you. If it says a player that come out at the age 22, 23, and he put good numbers and he plays really good, he can literally make that team. He can literally jump in. That's what I call a late developing player.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Right. So now, if I put my country on the side, that they have way more opportunity for those kind of players, and then I go to Latin America, for example, Dominican, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, I think it's missing something in there, because some players, they develop later, and then the age affecting them. Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't throw 85 miles an hour at the age 14 and 15, they not welcome you into the academy. Hey, it will be some guys that start throwing 90, 91 after they turn 21.
Right.
You know, giving them an opportunity, maybe by the time they turn 24, they get all the way to 94, 95. But when you have somebody throwing 94, 95 at the age 16, that's a blessing. You know what I mean? At the age 16, you throw 94, 95, you didn't develop that. That came with you as a person. Yeah. So I think it should be an opportunity for players, you know, that they 20 and above,
Right.
And
Get on the
let them what to see.
Yeah. You develop training programs, or you get with a good pitching coach who can really stretch you out. And sometimes that doesn't happen when you're 16. And sometimes a 16, 17-year-old kid, sometimes that's the best they'll ever be. They're dominant in high school. And you see that a lot in the United States, a dominant high school player, and then they go into the pros or they go to college and they back a little bit. They're not as good. A lot of that is work ethic. I mean, the key is work ethic. You have to keep improving yourself.
Now, if you have a guy that's 16 years old throwing 96, 98, how far can he go from there? Because that's a high risk.
Awfully hard at that age, Vladimir. That's really
that's a hard risk.
Yeah.
That when you turn 25, 26, you already got own problems.
Yeah.
But if you develop, the normal process, because I was part of the normal process, I think, because when I was 16, I was still on 91, 90, 92. But that's gas for my country. But it's 91, 92 is good velocity. But realistically, it's not gas for signing this day. Yeah. Because you can find thousands of kids throwing 90, 91, and that's not enough.
Yeah.
Giving them an opportunity 2 years, 3 years to see if they get that velocity up. Mm-hmm. I hit 96 miles an hour as soon as I turned 19. As soon as I turned 19, that's when I hit 96.
That's an exceptional fastball. And it is now. It always has. At that time, it was really exceptional. I mean, that's about as hard as Tom Seaver threw, 96, 97 miles an hour. And he was considered the hardest throwing pitcher in the National League after Nolan Ryan moved over to the Angels. So, but you're right. Today, the average fastball when I played was 87 miles per hour. This is the early 1980s. The average fastball today is about 93 or 94. So that's quite a bit difference. That's a real evolution in the game.
And now this is something that's reality. A player here can go to college for 4 years, right?
That's right.
And develop. So you graduate, how old you have to be to graduate high school? Correct me on that one.
17 or 18.
17 or 18. So you go to college, you play 4 years. After you finish college, how old are you?
21, 22 maybe?
All right, 22. All right, listen to me. That's 22. At 22, if you get drafted, you go play professional baseball. Right? So
right.
If you're from Latin America, the way that the process is right now, if you're 22, 23, you probably be into professional baseball for 3 years.
Yeah.
All right, for 3 years.
Right.
And at that time, if you don't make any progress on 3 years, or pull numbers up, you will get released. And then now the opportunity comes for somebody else. So this is do you follow me on this?
Oh, absolutely, I follow.
The preparation for those players.
You're telling me I played college ball before I went into the pros, and I got excellent training. We played about a 60-game schedule in the spring. I played collegiate summer ball in Alaska and Canada. That's another 50, 55 games in the summer, and probably 30 games in the fall, and with weightlifting and year round. And, I grew up in California with good weather. So I got good training, and a lot of kids who come out, especially nowadays, the college baseball programs in the U.S. are really training kids for professional baseball. Billy Beane of the A's, for instance, much prefers college players. He likes the college player. He thinks that they are more mature and very well trained by good coaches, and especially if they played on the Cape Cod League, where they played with wood bats. And so you're getting a lot of training, but the culture is different in Latin America, and the economics are far different. And so a lot of kids have to go into professional baseball to make some money for their families. And that's just a reality. So it's always been like that. There was always that dynamic existed when I was playing. I played with a lot of Dominicans. I played with Stanley Javier, whose father was Julian Javier, who played for the Cardinals. Yeah. They're a legendary family. I'll tell you a funny story. I was at Fenway with my daughter and my son-in-law, and the Uber driver was Latino. And I said, "Where are you from?" He says, "I'm from the Dominican Republic." I said, "What city?" He goes, "I'm San Pedro de Macorís." And I said, "Do you happen to know Stanley Javier?" And he goes, "Oh, Stanley Javier, yeah, I train his horses." Oh, wow. My daughter is sitting in the back of my son-in-law. He's going, "Is there anybody you don't know?" We're in an Uber in Boston, and Steve knows the cab driver knows a former teammate of Steve's, and I thought that was hilarious. But yeah, he was different. He was 16 years old, and he was going to college in the off season. He came from because his father had played in the major league, so his upbringing was different.
Good players. Those two good players.
They were good ball players. Julian was a great defensive player. Stanley was built. Oh my God, was he built? Yeah, at 16 years old, he was built like a 30-year-old man who was a weightlifter. He was an outstanding ball player. Did you ever know Stanley Javier?
Oh, yeah. I faced Stanley Javier's son in Dominican Republic during the Winter League.
Yeah.
But I met his dad, a couple times.
Yeah. I never met the dad. Yeah. Nice, good people. Yeah, Stanley was
very good people. Very good people. Very good boss player.
Right.
Vladimir, tell us a little bit more about the higher level national team. You just mentioned that you were in the Dominican. What were some of the leagues that you would play against? I'm sure there's Cuban games all over the place, but then would you hop from one island to another in the Caribbean?
Yeah. We play baseball everywhere. We got a lot of preparation. That's the most. So if we have like a big tournament, we do a scrimmage, and then we fly somewhere. We go to Mexico. We fly somewhere. We got preparation for that tournament. So it was baseball constantly, and it says at the young age. So I'm gonna tell you from myself. When I signed with the Diamondbacks, they assigned me the first year to Detroit Tigers because they don't have an expansion team. Into the draft come in June, July. And then after that, they have a team. So think about it. You're putting a player in a rookie level that's coming from the baseball in Cuba, that's coming from all the team Cuba, from all the tournament, and you put it at the rookie level. So I'm playing in the rookie level with the draft kids, and then from kids that come from Latin America for different countries, right? So now I'm super ready for this competition. They need to learn their way up. They need to compete. They need to do this. They need to do that. For me, it was like cruising, because I went 10-0, maybe like 6-7 complete games. So it was no competition for me at that level. So I went to high A. So when I went to high A, okay, wait a minute. Now you got to learn how to pitch a little bit more.
Okay.
So I have to change my repertoire a little bit more. I'll have to listen to a great pitching coach, Nardi Contreras, and then he gave me a lot of advice so I can navigate throughout that level. So this is what I say. High A and double A baseball, that's what the prospects are.
Yes.
Triple A, you got mature players. Mm-hmm. You can pitch good. You can do good things there. But if you want to get prospects and real good players, you got to go to high A, double A. That's the jump. Right. That's what the jump is. If you pass that level, you make it to the big leagues.
Yeah.
Because like literally, this is what I say. I'm pitching in high A. And I remember that one day I, being innocent, young guy, I pitched 9 inning complete game. And I give up 5 hits. And after the game, I went and talked to the pitching coach and I said, hey, coach, can I ask you a question? I give up 5 hits. I remember that I give up a hit by a right-handed hitter, but I give up 4 hits by the same player. And I say, who's that kid? That we don't talk about it before the game or the report, something like that. That was at that league. And then my pitching coach goes like, guess what? That player, it was a rehab assignment from the Angels. They came down and gave 4 at-bats and then went back to the big leagues. And I was like, oh, so that's how big leaguers look like when they hurt? And I'm like, he hit 4 bullets against me, and supposed to be he's in the rehab assignment. He's hurt.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's for you to learn that you got to get prepared if you ever get to the big leagues. And I said, okay, I'll be right back. So I take off running outside the clubhouse, and I went all the way around the stadium looking for that player. When I get there, in the minor league level, I found a Mercedes-Benz parking outside. That's not normal.
Right.
And that was his vehicle. So I went over there and I say, how you doing? With the little English that I have, I say, how you doing? I'm the guy that pitched today, and you got 4 hits against me. So can you sign this ball, please? And then he goes like, hey, thank you. You got good stuff, man. But keep going. You won't make it to the league. You just got to locate it better and this and that. And I said, thank you. It was Eddie Murray.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
4 for 4.
Yeah.
Complete game, 5 hits. I faced him when I was on high A. So that makes me understand that I got to do something different to get to the league. And now when I get to the league, because I went from high A, the following season I went to AAA, and then the following season I already in the major leagues. So I catch him up, and then I face him in the league. That's how baseball is. But I was prepared, you know what I mean? I was that nosy guys that ask questions. I was asking, how do you do this? How do you do that? Because I know that I need something else.
And how great that he said to you, yes, you're going to get to the big leagues. You just need to locate a little more. He gave you some advice. That was very smart of you that you did that. And you found this guy. You didn't just rest on your laurels. Oh, I threw a 5-hit shutout. No, you looked at the guy who got 4 hits off of you, and he's in the major leagues. So what can I learn from him? I think that's a really great lesson.
Yeah, and then I went back to my pitching coach and I said, what do you mean that I had to meet my location and this and that? And my pitching coach says, because right now you're getting by because you're a thrower, right? You're a thrower, but and you need to become a pitcher.
Right.
And I got offended. I was like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, you're a thrower. You get by batters. Your slider is hard and all that stuff, but location wins battle. Like in the minor leagues, we leave off a fastball. You know what I mean? In the big leagues, you establish your fastball to make your breaking balls work. You got to learn how to pitch backwards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he told me, how many fastballs do you have? And I said 2, 4-seam and a 4-seam. And I said, you don't know. You're supposed to have 5 fastballs and 7 total because you can look at your 4-seam on different part of the place and you use your 2-seam inside and back door. That's 7. And I was like, wait. Boosh. That blew out my mind. Excuse me for a second. I leave it like that.
So I'll tell a story that's along those lines. The great Tom Seaver was pitching for the Alaska Gold Panthers in summer baseball. This is one he was at USC. And he went to the team was coming into Wichita, Kansas to play in what was called the National Baseball Congress, which is a huge semi-pro tournament at the end of the summer in August. And leading into the tournament, they played against a team called the Wichita Dreamliners. It was a local semi-pro team. And there were 2 or 3 former major league players who were playing for the Dreamliners. Rod Cannell, who had played for the New York Mets, and a couple of other major league players. And Seaver gets the start against this team, and they light him up a little bit. They beat him 6-3. And, get about 9 hits. A couple Cannell hits one out of the ballpark. There's a couple doubles off the wall. So after the game, Seaver and some of his teammates go to a bar and they're having a couple of beers, and Seaver's down on himself. And Cannell and a couple of the other former major leaguers for the Dreamliners come in and they sit down with them. And one of them says to Tony, "You're going to be in the big leagues." And Seaver looks at him and says, "You guys lit me up today. What makes you think I'm going to the major leagues?" And he says, "Oh yeah, no, you've got all the stuff. You just have to learn a little bit more about, moving it around the plate, but you've got the stuff to be in the big leagues." And this Seaver learned from that discussion. It gave him so much confidence. It reminds me, Vladimir, of the conversation you had with Eddie Morey and your pitching coach. It gives you some confidence and some knowledge. It gives you knowledge, which is the absolute key in baseball. The more you know, the better you're going to be. All these guys have the talent. Everybody is the best player from their high school or their college or their hometown. And now they've slowly but surely moved up the ladder, and each rung of that ladder, they've shown that they have what it takes. And now when you meet this guy and you realize, okay, I still have more to learn. I need to put my ego in check and work on my game. So that's a story that you told me. That's how I read it.
And then, you when you're on that mound, you gotta learn. Baseball is all about learning every day. I remember that I had to memorize every single batter and every single at-bats. And I have to start writing it down. So I don't pitch to everybody the same. So I don't throw the same pitch back to back. I learn sequence. I learn location. I learn throw a pitch away on purpose. And then so and so. So this is what happened one time on AAA level. I have a pitching coach that said, "Hey, I'm going to challenge you today. You're going to go out there today and you're just going to throw 2-seam and changeup." And I'm like, I'm just going to give it up. And he goes like, "Just go out there. And then I know you try to strike out people. Just go out there and throw 2-seam and changeup." Well, I ended up going 5 innings. I ended up getting, I don't know, maybe like 10 ground balls, 1 strikeout, couple pop-ups. Maybe I walk 1 or 2. After my performance, he just said, "You don't look happy." And I said, "No, I'm not happy. My velocity was down. And you know what I mean? It was not my game. So, I'm not happy." And he goes like, "Let's come to the office. Let's talk." I said, "Why are you not happy about?" I'm like, "Yeah, I already tell you what I'm not happy about." I'm like, "You know what? As a pitching coach, I'm happy because I challenge you. You learn. You locate it. You trust your 2-seam. You develop your changeup better. And you still have your 4-seam like 97 on the packet. You still have your slider. You still have your curveball. You still have your split finger fastball. All that stuff is still there on your arsenal, right?" Now I can call the Florida Marlins and say that you are ready to get back up out there. Because now you got confidence to throw 3-2 changeup. And I'm like, 3-2 changeup? He goes like, "Yeah. In the big leagues, you got to learn how to throw 3-2 changeup.
Oh, absolutely.
You got to learn how to throw 3-0 changeup.
Sure.
2-2 slider. And the next guy, you got to throw 2-2 split." And then I'll be in that scenario multiple times when I'm facing Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, Mike McGuire's, Ken Griffey Jr. I got to face all those guys. And then the only mistake that I make throughout those years about everything that I learned, it was facing Dimitri Jones. that I throw him a changeup, he looked bad, and I throw another changeup, he looked bad. And I say, oh, I got him. Let me throw him another one. And then he take me deep.
Oh,
And then I saw him 3 days
Yeah.
later, and he goes like, hey, big league hitters, we make adjustments on the fly. You can't throw 3 pitches in a row in the league.
no, you
And I was speaking from the hitter's perspective. He said, guess what? Me as a hitter, I know that you guys can have made a mistake when you throw 3 pitches in a row, because if you throw a slider for a strike, that came out natural. If you throw another slider, you put a little intensity to it. So I got swing and a miss. Now you want to make it an extra effort, and you're going to hang it. And we're going to bang it. And I was like, man, this is blowing my mind. That's exactly what I'm doing as a pitcher. That's why pitchers make mistakes. And then, and then I have to throw 3-2 backdoor slider to Barry Bonds. And then he's looking at me kind of like, really? I'm like, yeah. You crawl in the play. I can't go on the play. And then you know what I mean? And then Maguire, Sammy Sosa, I was in that era that either you pitch or you don't survive, right? And then I'm going to tell you something that happens to me now, going back to Luis Tian and Bob Gibson, right? So, and you guys remember Baseball America?
You bet.
Yeah.
All right, so in 1996, right, I put on numbers, and in 1997, I put on numbers. So I was like on the first 100 top 100 players.
I remember seeing your name
in the country.
I was
Top
getting that
100 players in the
yes.
country, right?
You
So
bet.
Major League Baseball do a dinner meeting with all the prospects for the country in, I don't know if it was Washington or New York or something, I don't remember. But I know we were all there. And then I was looking around, it was like Freddy Garcia, and it was like, it was crazy players in that meeting. And I sneak around one time, and I talked to Luis Tian and Bob Gibson. And I say, hey, can you all give me some advice? You know what I mean, about pitching? And they trick me, and they goes like, all right, young fella, this is what's up. This is the home plate, and then this is the pitching man. All right. We let you choose. You're a pitcher, we're a hitter. We let you choose what side of the play you want. And me being innocent, I say I want the outside. And they go, see, that's why you're not successful on the mound. Because if we get to pick, we're picking the inside. So me and him, this is Luis Tian and Bob Gibson talking to each other. He was like, I don't know about you, but I did it. I own the inside part of the play. So when I pitch inside for ball. So I open up the outside part of the play. And then now the play becomes mine. So now the bodies then are creeping in on the play. And then I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So if I move off the play and then he swing, then he hit a foul. But he's not going to be diving. And then now I open up the outside part of the play, and then, you know what I mean? And then I leave outside, but I got to open it up with the inside. And then, you know what I mean? After that, so the time goes by, and then this is the reality that we got to look at, guys. Pedro Martinez, he moved the guys off the play. Randy Johnson, he moved the guys off the play to open up the outside part of the play. Roger Clemens, same thing. Now, if you're talking about, okay, so how Greg Maddux, he was so successful in Tom Glavine, because they move the guys off the play. And they come back to the outside corner, and they own that outside corner all day long. Because if you realize, if you look at it, Glavine and Maddux, they leave on the outside part of the play 85% of the game.
Yep.
But when they're coming inside, they move you off the play. And then now when I started applying that, that's when, like, okay, there you go. I'm moving on. I remember another day talking to a pitching coach, and I say, okay, what is the difference between a starter and a reliever and a closer? That's 3 different pitchers. I did those 3 jobs in the major leagues. The only way that I did it is because I asked questions how that job is done. If you're a middle reliever, you come in to throw 1 pitch to get that guy out of that situation. And then if you go back out, you're trying to get out to pass that game along to the closer. The closer is coming after you with the best that he has, right? The starting pitcher, he's the administrator. He's the one that needs to pitch. You know what I mean? To get to the 15. So when I learned how to pitch, I was having a hard time because back it was no middle reliever. It was a starting pitcher, closer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then when I get to the big leagues, and then everything changed around a little bit, and it was like, okay, so lefty against lefty, middle reliever, and then setup man and the closer.
Right.
So it was more opportunity, guys. Realistically, it was more opportunity. Back in the days, it was used to be the starting pitcher and the closer.
You know, there is a documentary called Fastball. It's narrated by Kevin Costner, and Bob Gibson is interviewed in this documentary, and he says in this documentary exactly what he said to you. He gave that exact advice. Yeah, I'm going to take the inside part of the plate. That's mine, and I'll give you the outside, maybe a little bit, but I'm going to take that inside. And it was the exact same thing. So you got some really good, you're a guy who sought out some smart people and learned the game. You went beyond your physical capabilities. You became an intellect, and the game is intellectual. Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine, those guys are so scientific. They've been willing to give up home runs to guys just to confuse the batter. They did this once with was it Lance Berkman of the Astros, or the other Bagwell?
Jeff Bagwell
did this with Bagwell one time. He let him hit one out of the ballpark, and I think it was Eduardo Perez was like, "Why?" And he goes, "You wait and see." And he gets him later in the playoffs on that same pitch, because Bagwell's looking for something else. He's looking for the pitch that he hit the homer on, and Maddux had set it up for him back in May. And he says, that's why we threw that pitch in May. Now that's a level of science and mathematics that goes into the game just beyond most people. But that's why you're talking about a guy who won 355 career games. But it sure sounds to me like you really mastered an awful lot of the game of baseball and the art of pitching. And that is what it is. It is an art. There's no two ways about it.
So now it's very important to have a good catcher, though. When you have a good catcher, that's so important. So I remember when I was in the Marlins, I was young. We got a young pitching staff, but we have catchers. They were like
Charles Johnson.
We got catchers. They were very professional and very prepared. So we got Mike Redmond, Paul Buckle, Joe Fabregas, Charles Johnson. And then after that, we got Ivan Rodriguez. So that helps a lot.
Those guys are good catchers.
I'm going to tell you something that happened to me in New York. Okay. I came in as a closer, bottom of the ninth. Bases loaded, no out. And I got back-to-back strikeout. Right now, you got Roy Alomar at the plate. All right, this is confidence. When you get confidence, you can go far away in any game. Roy Alomar at the plate, 3-2 count. 6 foul ball. Fastball inside. Grand slam foul. 2 seam outside. Foul ball straight back. Time. Come over here, Charles. He goes like, Vladdy, because he called me Vladdy like that. Vladdy, what do you want to do right here? I'm like, hey, we out. We don't have anything else. And I say, guess what? The same scenario happens to me in Cuba. The same scenario happens to me in the minor leagues. And the same scenario happens to me in the big leagues. You're going to go back out there and you're going to tap your legs left and right. You're going to get beat, and I'm going to throw you a palm ball in the middle of the plate. He goes, but we don't have sign for that. We haven't practiced that. And I was like, yeah, I throw this before when I'm in the middle of the storm. Go back over there. So I say, here comes. I check my runners. I just throw it with my whole hands. A palm ball is something that's slower than the changeup.
Right.
He's swinging early and he's swinging a miss. After that, he looking at me like I'm crazy. Yeah. And then we had the best conversation that we have. Me and that guy in the clubhouse after the game. And I say, it's no better pitch that you can throw in the game if you have confidence and trust. If you throw a fastball and you're not sure that that's what you want, even if the catcher calls it or the manager calls it, you the one releases the ball. That energy is negative. You're not gonna have positive results. So my energy, it was positive, and I have positive results. And I will never forget. I think that's that's probably like one of the biggest statements that I have, man. Maybe in 1999, I didn't make the All-Star game because I need one more save.
Mm.
So, but I was like, very lucky enough to do multiple times, like multiple times in the game, and I got no regret whatsoever when I throw my last pitch, and I say I'm gonna retire now, and then I'm done with baseball. It's not because I was hurting. It's not because like my body was tired. It's because my calling, it was done. And then I talked to Craig Kimbrough, right? And I
Yep.
said, buddy, I'm retiring, and I'm gonna give you my roster spot to you. And I pull him on the side, and I said, this is how you pitch in the big leagues. La 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 la.
Wow.
And I had the same conversation with Julio Teran, and then more kids that were at that age coming up. Brandon Beachy, Johnny Banners, those guys. Well, Kate Kimbrough taking my roster spot. So I can't be more happy than that. Look in the career that he has.
Yeah, no kidding.
You
Wow.
know?
Well, before we go to your retirement, let's talk a little bit about your league play too. And you mentioned something about Greg Maddux, and Steven had a story about him. I had heard Maddux say this during an interview. Someone said, "What was the toughest time? What was the toughest level before you got to the big leagues for you to pitch in?" And he goes, "Oh, high school." High school? Why would you say that? He goes, "Because the guys that I was facing in high school would swing at anything. When you get to single or double A or you move up, there are certain pitches that they're looking for. So I had to learn how to pitch in high school differently than what I needed to do when he was later. It was still a developmental thing, but because of your academy upbringing and the different way that you were brought up in Cuba than what most American kids go through, talk a little bit about when you started throwing and these guys, wait a second, that's my best pitch, and it's a ground rule double. Right? And then you got to learn to find a different spot to throw that guy to get him out, where you had to learn. When did that begin for you? I know you asked a lot of questions and you wanted to learn, but when did you realize something on the mound was going wrong, that my best pitch is getting hit?
That's when the big league coaches take place
Okay.
in a one-on-one meeting with you, and then you got to go into analyze videos instead of writing things down, because you got to go on base like how the batters are sitting in the box, and you got to move around on the mound too to be more effective. You know what I mean? You can be on the left side of the rubber, or you can move on the far side of the rubber.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And things like that. So it's a lot of tips in the game that can get you to navigate that situation, in case that he take that good slider out of you, can then move a little bit more so he can swing, set up the batters. It's interesting, it's like going to school, but when you learn how to do that, it's just so good. It's so beautiful. They allows you to compete better. Yes,
Yeah.
because I learned from it. I remember they playing with the Braves. If you're not a good bonner, you cannot play with Bobby Cox.
Mm.
So we practice bunting a lot. And I remember telling my pitching coach, and I say, hey, when I was with the Marlins, I bunt with men on first and second against Greg Maddux. But I remember him shifting on that mound. Can we go back and look at that video? And then I remember that he started in the middle of the rubber to throw a two-seam. So I followed off the third base line. That's one strike. And then he moved to the right side and he threw the same two-seam. Now I hit it foul, more foul. And now he moved to the left side of the rubber and he threw me a cut fastball. So I reached for the ball and I followed off to the right side. And he gave me out like that. And I was like, oh, that clicks in. And, that's play the game.
Yeah.
You got to play the game.
Even though it's just 17 inches wide, the plate is, you're learning angles, aren't you? And that's mathematics, that's geometry, and being able to take advantage of that situation. Is that what you learned from that experience with Greg?
Yeah, because, if I move to the left side of the rubber and I throw you a two-seam to your waist, that ball come back and you're going to take it. But if I'm going to go ground ball out, I move to the right side of the rubber and I throw the same two-seam down and away so you can roll over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you're putting yourself in that position. You go like, okay, I got to do this. You know what I mean? I got to do this.
And it's interesting because you're talking about something that doesn't happen anymore. The pitchers don't hit in the National League. It occurs to me that you're learning about pitching. You're describing learning about pitching by hitting, and that makes all the sense in the world. You're watching a master work you. And when you have the designated hitter, you don't have that opportunity, So that I think that makes a lot of, that's really, that advocates for not having a designated hitter as far as I can see.
So now I'm sharing something with you guys at this time that I didn't share with a lot of people, but it's part of my testimony and it's part of my statement. And I want you guys to pay attention to this. Right? In 2007, I played with the White Sox. In 2008, I got to go through surgery and I got a bone spurs taken out of my elbow. So I got to do rehab assignment. And I got to build my arm back up because it's like learning how to walk after you got out of surgery. Mm-hmm. And then I remember, the trainer Takao from the White Sox. He's an amazing guy. He helped me with my rehab. And I remember when I throw my last blooper session with him, he told me, you can go to win a ball right now and then throw a complete game because you are well prepared. And I listened to his steps, and then it was so good. Now, after I finished win a ball, I went back home. At that time, my home was here. And I remember I'm a free agent, right? I'm a free agent, I don't have a job because I lost my job. So I went online. And I see that they have tryouts. The Braves like to do tryouts in Rome, Georgia.
Yes.
And it was an open tryout in down Florida with St. Louis. And there was another one with the Marlins again. So I did those. And then I scheduled one with the Braves. Now, when I went to the Braves one, I'm walking in with 300 kids, all size kids. It doesn't matter where you come from. It's an open tryout. I'm wearing Chicago White Sox uniform down in Florida. I remember walking by this is like during the spring training season time. I remember walking by the bullpen and Eddie Perez turned around and he waved at me and then he goes like, Chicago White Sox? They're not here. They're in Arizona. And I'm like, yeah, I know, buddy, I know. So I went all the way back to the back for years to do the tryouts and this and that. And I remember warming up in the middle of that mass of kids. It was a catcher there. And the only I tell the catcher is like, listen, man, I'm trying to get back in the league. You put the glove there, and I'm going to hit my spot. With everything that I'm throwing, I'm just going to hit my spot. Now, the coordinators, I was like Kurt Can, and it was another one in there. And then Jose Martinez, the Cuban the Cuban scout, Jose Martinez. He was Kansas City and Atlanta Braves. He was there too. So they stopped when I was throwing my boop, and they stopped right behind me. So I feel it. And I was like, okay, this is my time. So I crank it up a little bit, and I started throwing everything for a strike and this and that. I finished. I thank the catcher. Thank you very much. Everybody got dismissed. Everybody goes home. Everybody got dismissed. I'm driving towards Atlanta in my truck. So when I'm like half away, I think, I got a phone call and say, hey, this is Atlanta Braves organization. They want you to report to camp tomorrow at 6:30 in the morning. I have to turn around and drive back. Get a hotel room, get some sleep, and report to camp, minor league camp. So I report to camp early in the morning. They give me a uniform. They give me pants and this and that. I eat breakfast. You know what I mean? I'm a veteran now. I'm surrounded by kids.
Right.
This is like they have the extended spring training going on. Yeah. And then I'm there with these kids and stuff like that. You know, I'm disciplined. So I went out there and practiced with them, playing catch, this and that. I was tired, guys. I was tired.
Not so much you probably didn't have a change of clothes.
No, not that. So I came out for lunch. And then when I'm sitting in lunch, eating on the table with a bunch of kids, there was a guy that came in and goes like, hey, who's Vladimir Núñez here? And I said, this is me. How you doing? He goes like, hey, I want you to get dressed because I'm going to take you in a golf cart to the big league side because they want you over there as a backup for today in the bullpen. John Glavine is starting pitcher today. So you're going to be as a backup in case we run out of pitchers. I change my clothes real quick. I'll get my spikes, get my glove, get ready, and then get on that golf cart and then drive to the other side. When I get there, I'm walking in. Chipper Jones. Hey, what's up, buddy? Good to see you again. How you doing? And this and that. You know, I used to face them. So I started saying hello to people. And they put me in the locker. There has nothing in it, just a jersey. Just a jersey. So I throw that jersey in, and I went to the kitchen to get a drink, something like that. And then Bill, it was the travel secretary, he said, Bobby wants to talk to you. And they take me to Bobby's office. And then I say, how you doing? How are you? That's the first time that we met. He said, I'm going to have you as a backup on the bullpen. We're going to use you if we need it. Just be ready, kid. I remember you from the Florida Marlins. And then I go back out, you know, get ready, sit down, you know. So we go back down, game time. All the relievers starting walking to the bullpen on the bottom of the first inning. So I'm walking with them. I'm wearing number 98, guys. Nothing in the back. So I'm sitting in the bullpen over there with all the relievers. And bottom of the fifth, their phone rings. We're playing against the Phillies. And they say, hey, get Núñez up. I'm like, man, I thought I was a backup. And now I'm thinking, I should throw a bullpen yesterday and the day before for the Marlins and the day before for St. Louis. And now I'm up again. So I'm like, hey, man, you've been trained for this. You got it. So top of the sixth, I'm in the game. I got to face Ryan Howard, Jimmy Rawlings, I think at that time.
Yeah, this is a world champion.
And then whoever.
Yeah.
The only thing is like I get one fly ball and 2 strikeouts.
Chase Utley, all those guys, you bet. Yeah.
So I go in the dugout, and Bobby was like, "Good job, kid. Yeah, I like it." He goes like, "You have one more?" I can't say no. So I say, "Yeah." So I go back out, and I strike out the side. I strike out the side, and they say, good job, kid." So now, as soon as the game's over, I'm in a golf cart. Say goodbye to everybody. I'm in a golf cart going back to the minor leagues.
Yeah.
The minor leagues complex is closed.
Oh, no.
So they got to get a key to get me in so I can take a shower, get dressed, and go. So I go back to the hotel. I take ibuprofen, and I ice my arm for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
The next day, I wake up, report to the minor league complex, right? When I get there, I have nothing in my locker. I'm like, I just got released. The trainer comes and say, hey, Vladdy, you want to ice your arms and stuff? You want to put a hot pack or something? I'm like, yeah, I need some. And then he goes like, hey, the kids, they're not here yet. I know you show up early, but after we finish streaming right here, you got to go to the big league side because all your stuff got moved to the big league side.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. Okay.
And I was like, so when I moved to the big league side, now 98 has a Núñez on top. That happens overnight.
Okay.
Okay. That's it. The last day of spring training, I stayed there. I stayed with the big leaguers for like 3 more weeks. The last day of spring training, we break camp. My truck got shipped to Georgia, and I'm on the airplane with the Braves.
Wow.
And we play exhibition games against Detroit Tigers. And then it's 2 spots available for the bullpen or whatever. And then I got number 48, Núñez in the back. I make the team.
Okay.
How's that? How's that registered on your head?
Yeah.
Explain that to me. How did that register?
I can't explain it to you. I can see it in your face. It's the love of the game. I see the love of the game you have.
So when they say that,
that's what shown through.
When I say that to people, people don't. It's like no, really, you got to be kidding me. See, that picture was taken that day. That picture was
glad. What happens
that day during the exhibition game when I win my spot on the bullpen rotation.
And your dog tired, right? You've been up all night. Well, not all night, but you've been driving for the last day and a half.
So now the following day, I'm driving from my home to Turnerfield, and from my home and to Turnerfield. Yeah. And I just remember I was on 75, going for an open tryout. That's why I say, if you have an open tryout somewhere, take huge chances because you never know what he has for you. He did it for me. You know what I mean? And now when I was there, that's when I talked the most because I got to talk to all these veteran guys. And then Smolsey pulled me on the side and he goes like, hey, you know you're pitching for Bobby Cox, right? You know that I'm in a starting rotation. If I go 6 2/3, you can't come after me and then blow it out. Because Coxie, he used spikes. And then you're going to see his sparks on the ground. You know what I mean? And I learned pitching with the Braves that you can't go 3-2 with everybody. That's an insult. And I said, well, you got to teach me because the weather here is different than Florida. It's different than Arizona. The ball gets dry. It's different than Colorado Rockies. You got to learn how to pitch over there because you throw a slider and the ball backed off. And then sometimes you throw a fastball and the ball cuts. And, that's my testimony right here for you.
I love it.
That is fabulous. And again, that's you love the game. You were going to pursue the game and you were going to leave it all on the field. You weren't going to leave anything left undone. You still had more to play. But my only question is, now let me ask you this. Where was the Braves AAA team at that time?
Oh, they were the Gwinnett Braves? No, sorry. I take that back. They were Richmond Braves.
Richmond.
Okay, yep. Richmond, Virginia. Now, if you said there were 2 spots left. If they didn't, you had your truck was being transported to Atlanta. What if you had been sent to Richmond? Then you would have had to somehow go to Richmond and figure out how to get your truck to Richmond. Not to mention,
well, I play at Richmond too.
In fact, it doesn't sound to me from what I'm still not sure if you even have a toothbrush or toothpaste or a change of clothes, because it sounds to me, if I've heard this whole story correctly, that it starts off with you going to a tryout camp and somehow being ferried to various locations, half the time with a clubhouse in which it's closed, you don't have a key, and then somehow making it to the Atlanta Braves.
Because this is how I look at it.
It's
a business.
It is.
It's a business, right? So you got to take care of business.
Yeah.
So I will draw my truck to Richmond, and then I know when I get there, I'm going to pitch because it happens before. It's a business. I remember when I got traded with the Diamondbacks. They say you got the good news and the bad news. I said, well, give me the bad news first. You just got traded. I'm like, how did I get traded? I'm the original Diamondback signed. I'm the first original Diamondbacks that make it to the big leagues. So I'm in the book double. And now I got traded because it's a business. So I went home and I jump on the pool for the last time. I get dressed and I go to the airport. I catch a fly to Miami for 5 hours. I take a taxi to the Pro Player Stadium. When I get there, I put up in a uniform. And then I walk around and I go to the bullpen. The game is on the third inning. On the bottom of the seventh, no, on the top of the seventh, I'm in the game. I'm in the game.
Yep.
It's baseball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nothing surprised me about the game. That's why you got to be in your mind. You got to be strong to be a sports player, to be a baseball player. No matter.
I don't have quite as colorful a story, but I once spent a day in Phoenix, Arizona, in which at 8:00 in the morning I was at the low minor league camp for the Oakland Athletics, and by 12:00 I was pitching in a major league spring training exhibition game with Joe Morgan, facing Joe Morgan, with Ricky Henderson playing behind me, Billy Martin, my manager, Frank Robinson, the manager of the opposing team, Bill King and Lon Simmons announcing the game. There were 5 Hall of Famers involved in this particular game. I started the day at the Arizona State Junior Varsity Field, which is where the A's minor league camp was, and finished the day pitching and striking out 7 in 3 innings against Joe Morgan and Jack Clark, a good team. I mean, I come back to the Camelback Inn in Arizona where we were staying, and this guy Chuck Fick, who was a pretty darn good AA catcher, he goes, "Where were you all day?" You don't even know. I can't even explain where I was all day. You wouldn't believe what happened to me. I still can't even believe it to this day. So I'm kind of with you on this story. It is a business, but sometimes it can be a really wonderful experience.
Yeah, and the Oakland A's back in the days, they used to have a lot of lefties because I faced the Oaklands one time and they got 9 lefties in the lineup.
Mm.
Yeah.
And they all look similar. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? You know what I mean? But hey, we leave to tell stories, and then for all the
Vladimir, people. You said you wore number 98. If I'm not mistaken, Orlando El Duque Hernandez wore 98 with the Yankees when he won the World Series in 1998. And do you know? Are you aware of that, or am I?
No, I don't remember. I don't remember it. I don't record that. But in baseball, when you been added or invited, they always use high numbers. They always use high numbers. So they use like 99, 98, 97, 96. But it's funny, it's funny because like later in my career, I gotta give up my 48. I give it up. Because Tommy Hansen tell me, hey, is there any way I can get 48? And I say, I'm in the big leagues, baby. You can have 48. I got 56. It's okay.
Hey, Don Drysdale wore that number.
Some
of these guys, I don't know if this was what El Duque did, but sometimes you'll see a guy who gets a very high number in spring training, makes the team. I think Jim Bouton did this, makes the team, and he's so happy to have made the team. He goes, no, I'll wear the number that I wore in spring training to remind me that, I wasn't supposed to be here, and that I beat the odds to get there. And that has happened with some players. I mean, I don't know, maybe El Duque wore 98. Maybe that was his favorite number. Maybe
No, his favorite number is 26.
What's that?
His favorite number was 26.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. I thought I remembered that he wore a high number, but my memory is not always that good. But he was a heck of a pitcher, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, he was good. He was very good, very good.
That whole story played a huge role in Cuban baseball, because before that there were very few Cubans who were getting over, and Levon had made it first, and he had a huge World Series with Miami in 1997, and there's a whole big MLB special, and I'm sure you've seen it. Okay, I'm incorrect about the number, but I am think there is somebody who did that. I'm just mistaking him. But
well, now, if you look at the picture, sorry for interrupt. If you look at the picture, right, and you go like, okay, everybody likes Luis Tian, everybody likes Marichal, right? They got the same leg kick and all that. So
yeah, you can.
When I found my midpoint, that was my midpoint.
Yeah.
El Duque, guess whose his midpoint was, and then in the comfort zone for his pitching. Similar to that, Gooden.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes, same technique, everything the same. That was his idol.
Yeah, and Gooden was a traditional drop and drive type of pitcher. Tom Seaver drop, but you can see even in this picture, you can see that El Duque's back leg is starting to bend a little bit, and ultimately he's going to use that back leg to get his power and drive to the plate. Even El Tiante did that with all of his gyrations, as opposed to, say, Bill Spaceman Lee, who was strictly, and Bill threw harder than people realized, but he did not do it. He only threw hard very rarely when he needed to. And he mostly just worked around the plate and threw this big curveball. I don't remember. Did you ever get a chance to meet Bill Spaceman Lee, maybe when you were in Boston?
No.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. And he's a good friend of Tion, as we saw from that photo. The drop and drive, I mean, that I've always... Were you a guy who used his back leg and the big muscles of your leg, or did somebody teach you that early, or was that ever explained to you?
I have to use my legs. And then I was like over the top, 3/4, little bit drop, and then I learned how to throw everything from all three angles, to compete, because, I was looking for, I need more. I need to learn how to, throw the split finger straight down.
Yeah.
Down and away, and then down inside. So, it was pitching. You remember Jose Contreras?
Yes.
Kind of like the same techniques and almost the same repertoire. Everybody the same. You remember Livan Hernandez? Livan Hernandez, he throw hard when he wants to.
Yeah.
Only when he wants to, 91, 92, and then all of a sudden 97. You go like, where'd that come from? I'm like, they're pitching.
That was Marshall to a T. Marshall, they said he had 27 pitches. Between the sidearm, the 3/4 arm, straight overhand, he threw a screwball, he threw several changeups, he threw your palm ball. He threw different fastballs. He threw inside, outside, up, down. And I don't know whether it's the culture, the Latin culture, but it really does seem that a lot of the Latino pitchers, I know Martinez, Pedro, he had a lot of different angles, and he had a lot of different pitches. Levon had different pitches. El Duque did. Tion, I mean, he and Marshall were very similar. There was an earlier Cuban pitcher, long before your time, but one of the best in baseball. I'm not sure whether he hurt himself. He might have had the best curveball in baseball, along with Sandy Koufax. His name was Camilo Pascual.
Camilo Pascual. Yeah.
You heard that name?
Yep.
He pitched for the Minnesota Twins in the early 60s, and Mickey Mantle couldn't hit him. Roger Maris couldn't hit him. And he had this big curveball that was really good, an all-star pitcher. And, he was able to get over before they closed. Are you aware of the fact that Castro was a left-handed pitcher?
Yeah.
He was scouted by the Washington Senators and the New York Giants. And I heard this incredible story. It was told by a guy named Don Hoke. And Don Hoke was a third baseman for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I think he might have managed, or either in the big leagues or in the minor leagues. He was a longtime baseball guy. Yeah, there's Camilo Pascual, great pitcher. Anyway, Don Hoke tells a story that he's playing in the winter leagues in Havana. And this is during the Cuban Revolution. And Castro shows up. This is like there's music and a band. This is accompanying this whole scene of Castro arriving with all of his revolutionistas, and they enter the ballpark and they everyone, hey, Castro is here. Some people are booing, some people are cheering, and Castro literally takes the field and he decides, I'm going to throw. And Hoke is like, what's going on? And the umpire's going, some of these guys have guns. So I suggest you get in there and see and Castro throws. Now I thought he was a left-handed pitcher. So now I see there he's a right-handed pitcher. So I stand mistaken. Of course, Hoke was a right-handed hitter. He throws like 3 in a row at Hoke's head. And finally, Hoke he looks at the umpire. He says, I don't care if I get thrown out of the game or we have to call the game. I'm not facing this guy anymore. But that was a story about Castro. And it's funny. I mean, he certainly, I'm not for his politics, but he loved baseball and he was apparently fairly good at it. So
yeah, everybody loved baseball on the island, though.
Yeah, it's a colorful game, and it just. Are you aware of the story? This is the Dominican Republic. This is another story. Rafael Trujillo takes over as the dictator in the Dominican Republic after I think they split from, I don't know what they were. They were aligned with Haiti and Hispaniola. And he decides this is the 1930s, 1935. And he decides that he wants to, the people are clamoring for change because he's a dictator and they don't have food and their economy is not looking very good. So he decides he's going to do like the Romans, bread and circuses, and bring in baseball. And the way he does it is he brings in the best Negro League players of 1935. This is Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson. And these guys all come down there and they're paid good money. And the aide to dictator Rafael Trujillo says, now, you're not allowed to lose. Like, well, what do you mean? Satchel Paige is like, what do you mean if we're not allowed to lose? And he's like, this type of thing. The team went something like 71-0. And when they won their last game, they all just beat a path out of the Dominican Republic. And so that was, baseball down there it's always sort of been mixed with revolution and a lot of color. And it's just, when it got to the major leagues, I think it just brought a lot of color and a lot of excitement. Just like when the Negro Leaguers came in, they brought in, speedball, a different style of baseball, and we saw that again with the Cubans and the Dominicans, and every country has their own style. And
I remember witnessing and seeing a baseball game take place from the president of Cuba against the president of Venezuela. The president of Venezuela, he flew to Cuba with his team and plays against Castro's team.
Yeah.
And they take the field. They both pitch for each side.
That's right. We were talking about Bo Belinsky a few weeks back, Harper, and he was a pitcher in the 60s, and he played winter ball in Caracas. And there's one story where he was in a restaurant, and all of a sudden there's gunfire, and everybody goes underneath the table, and he's like finishing his dinner, under the table, because I might not get a chance to finish my dinner if this gunfire gets much closer. And
Steve, where are you located? I'm sorry for asking.
I'm in California.
What part?
Northern California. I'm near San Francisco. I'm a lifelong Oakland A's fan.
Okay.
And
there you go. See, that's the baseball game that I was telling you about.
Holy cow! Look at that. Oh, that's the guy before Maduro.
That was Chavez.
Chavez, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Castro was pretty old at that point. Was
Chavez?
I know Castro could pitch.
Yeah, I remember that when they had that challenge. Wow. Yeah. Man, California. I remember all those cities in the minor leagues, man. Stockton, Modesto,
sure.
Lake Elsinore, Visalia. They have
several of those.
Fresno and Bakersfield and Ontario.
Yeah, I remember those. And they're both flies out of there.
Depends where you are. Visalia, it's going to fly out. You're kind of up against the foothills of the Yosemite. Actually, you're not far from Yosemite. Reno, was Reno in the league?
No, Reno was not in the league at the time.
That is a place for the ball.
They got Burkesfield.
Yeah,
they got Burkesfield in there. Yeah, California League. If you survive in the California League, you make it. California League, that was the league.
Well, a lot of great players have come through the California League, obviously we've lost the A's, which is a real tragedy. I mean, they're in Sacramento now. I wish they'd stay in Sacramento. The idea of them going to Las Vegas is really very disturbing to me, because that's my team. You grow up watching, Reggie Jackson, Bert Campaneris.
Bert Campaneris.
Great ball player.
That was like, I remember when he visited Cuba. He visited Cuba, and they did like a baseball camp, and he was a shortstop teaching us how they feel and I was like, wow. I'll never forget that. I was like 9 years old when he came for the first time over there.
Tony Oliva, it was as good a hitter. He's an underrated. I think I don't know if maybe Logan can check. I think he finally made it to the Hall of Fame. If he didn't, he should be. Are either of you aware whether Tony Oliva is in Cooperstown?
I don't know. I'm just looking at the ugliest uniform I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, I love those uniforms.
Come on.
I love those uniforms.
Hey, Vlad, would you feel comfortable?
Look good to me.
Would you fit? Really? That looks good to you?
Yeah, it looks good to me.
Yeah, I love those. They were different. They won championships wearing those.
They kind of did, right?
And then when you're celebrating after winning Game 7, you could be wearing bloomers and it looks good.
Yeah. Hey, Vlad, you mentioned a little while ago you were on the very first. Talk about this: the inaugural signing in the very first year, 1998, with Arizona. What was that like for you, getting called up and being a part of the first? Everything's new there. What they win 70 games, they lost 90, give or take, whatever the record was. It doesn't matter. New baseball experience, and you being a part of that. What was it like when you get to play your first game? And this is your first major league experience too, getting called up with the Diamondbacks.
Well, the only I can remember is that I stepped on the ground because when I signed with the Diamondbacks, they take me to the ground level where the field was going to be built, and they have a stick on the ground with the little flag to it that says, "This is going to be the pitching mound," and they have another one down that says, "That's where there's going to be home plate."
Okay.
And from home plate and pitching mound, they started building the stadium. By getting called up to the major leagues, and I think we were in Cincinnati. And then that's when Buck Showalter gave me the opportunity. And my first batter was Adam Boone.
Sure. Great USC Trojan.
Adam Boone is the manager for the Yankees, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, the first batter was Brett Boone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second baseman.
Yeah.
And then
another USC Trojan.
And then he hit a ground ball to second base. I know that I closed my eyes when I released the first pitch.
Really?
Yeah, because I do not know what was going to happen. So I give up a ground ball to second base. And then after that, I think I strike out Barry Liking and then strike out Ken Griffey Jr.
Holy cow.
And then after that, I was relaxed. I was like, okay, I can get the guys out.
Sounds like Carl Hubble in the 1934 All-Star game.
Yeah.
Hey, Harper, last week with Bud Biancalani, you mentioned Vladimir just said he closed his eyes. Harper was talking about being a long snapper in the National Football League, and he would practice doing the snap with his eyes closed, to get the muscle memory. Now, what years were you with the Diamondbacks, Vladimir?
I signed in 96. And then I got traded in All-Star break, 1998.
So
98.
Were you there? You were not there with Randy Johnson?
Yeah, I was there with Randy Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Andy Bannock.
All right.
Kelly Estinek. Green was the catcher too. Luis Gonzalez.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good players. The closer was Greg Olson.
Yeah, former Brave.
Yeah, and I said, don't give me an opportunity because I will take it.
Yeah. Well,
he gave me an opportunity one day. I think he pitched like back-to-back days in a row.
Even if they lock the clubhouse door, you're still going to bang it your way through.
Yeah, I think he pitched like 4 days in a row, and then he gave me an opportunity in Anaheim.
Yeah,
Anaheim. I got my first save in Anaheim. I think I remember facing Garrett Anderson.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Erstad.
Darren Erstad, former kicker for the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
And then Edmonds.
Oh God! Talking about great defensive center fielders.
Yeah, Edmonds. Yeah, that was my three batters that I faced when I got my first save. So
those are three good hitters.
Glenn Sherlock, was he in the bullpen then? I'm looking at a roster right now of
he was a coach.
98. Yeah, he was. Buck Showalter was your head coach. Batista, Bell, Edwin Diaz, Andy Fox, Hanley Frias, Danny Klansman, Matt Williams was on that team. Matt had come from the Giants organization.
Jay Bell.
There's 100 pitchers on the roster here. You guys went through a whole slew of different guys on the mound.
Yeah, right? Jay Bell was on the team.
Yeah.
We got Todd Stottlemyre. It was good. It was a good team. It was really a good team.
Well, yeah, just a couple years later, you end up playing in 2001. Not you, but the organization ends up playing for their first World Series. They beat the Yankees.
Yeah, I remember Buck Showalter calling me to his office in the spring training, and he said, "Hey, you got a good chance to make this team, but the only way that you can make this team, I know you're about to hire your child, is if you name him Buck." And I was like, "No, man, are you serious?" And then I was so upset. And then he goes like, "Man, this is a joke."
Yeah,
this is a joke. I say, go to AAA.
American humor for you here.
I said, go to AAA and put up numbers, and then learn how to be a reliever. And then when the opportunity comes, I will call you up to the big league.
Yep.
That was good. That was good. But I got some strict managers, guys. I got some managers. They were like no joke. You know what I mean? John Balls in Florida. Oof. They were managers. It was like, let's go, or you ain't there.
Right.
No, you know what I mean? It was tough.
Who was the manager, Steven, that smoked all the time? Was with the Pirates.
Jim Leland.
Jim Leland. Did you have Jim Leland at all?
In Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah, in Detroit, but I was like only in the spring training time.
So did you bring him a pack of Camel filterless or Marlboro Reds? Was that your gift to coach?
No, it means like no. It was fine with me. It was fine with me. I was there to get an experience.
Yep.
You know, so.
Well, before we let you go, I want to ask you a question regarding the cultural change for you as a Spanish-speaking first player. You speak excellent English, and thank you for allowing us to speak in English with you. And every conversation I've had with you is in English. But what's that like, not just for you, but for the majority of Latin players, Cuban players specifically, to realize, man, I in order to do this right, I got to be bilingual and I got to be able to do this at the right pace. What was that like for you, that experience of just learning every day about speaking the language and being able to?
It was a challenge. It was a challenge. It was very a challenge. It was something so difficult to be able to be around players and then not communicate.
Yep.
And not talking. It becomes an internal challenge for me, and I say, okay, I got to get this figured out of me, and I need to start learning. So I don't want to have translation. I just want to be able to talk. So I started opening it up, and then I started repeating after players. So if somebody said good morning, I said good morning right after, and then I started putting words together until I started with a little 1 minute conversation until I do my first interview in English without repeating the same word. And I say, okay, it's possible. You just gotta. It's a choice. You know what I mean? It's a choice. You got to choose. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to learn? Yeah. And everything was challenging. You know, learn how to drive is challenging. Learn how to, navigate through life. It was a challenging. So, but I did it. You know, it took me like probably about 5 months. 5 months to starting to be fluent.
Vladimir, I used to write for a magazine, and I used to write for the San Francisco Examiner, and I've written 30 books, probably about 10 of them about baseball. So I have interviewed a lot of baseball players. I have interviewed Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire. I have interviewed Barry Zito, Jeff Kent. I have interviewed Bill Spaceman Lee, Luis Tiant. You get the picture. I've interviewed a lot of people. I think this interview that we're conducting with you today is probably the best and most insightful interview with a baseball player that I've ever been privileged to be involved in. You have provided so much information and knowledge and joy of baseball that you share with us. And I'm enjoying this interview as much as any that I've ever conducted with any of those superstar ball players. So I want to thank you very much.
I appreciate it, you guys. You guys don't know that I throw a no-hitter?
I didn't know that. No. Are you serious?
Yeah, I throw a no-hitter in the bullpen. I'm going to tell you why I throw a no-hitter in the bullpen. When I was in the middle reliever, that was a tough job. So we're in San Diego. Edgy Burnett is pitching, and then he throw a no-hitter. But he walked like 14 guys. So in every inning, it's like, Núñez, get up. Núñez, get up. So when he got the final out, I was exhausted. So me and him, we celebrated together. Yeah. I said, you throw a no-hitter. I did one in the bullpen, buddy.
I wasn't aware that
you
you
guys don't
get
know that. You
you
guys
got
don't know that. You got to
full
go
credit.
look at it.
So
You guys like,
he doesn't give up a hit, but he has the bases loaded with one out, right? And he's got to get out of the jam in the
and
fifth
then he
inning.
struck out the side. And then 2 innings later, the same thing.
Yeah.
You know
And
what I
then you
mean?
get up again.
And then I don't know what pitch count was, but we can't take him out.
Yeah. No, you
We
can't.
can't take him out. I don't know if he throws 200 pitches that day, but we can't take him out because he's throwing a no-hitter.
Right. Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. So you threw 100 pitches warming up, getting ready, and you didn't get one of them, not a single one counted.
And the bullpen at the old stadium.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's part of baseball history. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Thank you for you see, Stephen, we get the insight that we're getting right here today is
Yeah, no, it's absolutely magnificent. The just the whole thing, the Cuban background and the whole color that comes from that, and of course talking pitching is always, that's, I'm right there as far as that's concerned. There's nothing like talking pitching, whether it's Bo Belinsky or Pat Jordan or Tom Seaver or anybody, Bob Gibson. It's a unique craft, and it's an art, and it really sounds to me like you've mastered that art about as much as you possibly can. You left it all in the field. You did everything you could in the game of baseball. You took your talents as far as you could, your considerable talents, took it all the way to the major leagues. And, when you think about it, Vlad, think about all the great baseball players who did not get to the major leagues. Great athletes. People, for me, people I knew, and I played at a really strong high school against a lot of really great players. I played in college against a lot of great players, played in the minor leagues with a lot of outstanding athletes. And there's a long list of these guys who did not play in the major leagues. You not only made it to the major leagues, you had a significant career in the major leagues. You had success at that level. And, that's what you did. Let's face it, is harder than becoming a doctor. There are more doctors in this country than there are Major League Baseball players. So you really overcame a lot of odds, and God bless you for it.
Thank you so much.
Well, anything else, Vlad? I know you're working on some things now. Your son is coaching the best 14-year-olds in the country there in Tampa. I got a chance to visit with you in the field and talk a little bit about that, your family, and what's going on now with you.
Well, my son, he chose to follow my steps. You know what I mean? He was a good baseball player. He got drafted by the White Sox. He played a couple of years with the White Sox, and then he kind of like paid the price for when COVID-19 hits.
Wow.
And they started reducing and cutting players, so he was in the middle of that. And then after that, he said, "Dad, I will follow your steps. I know you're doing your calling over there in Georgia with the young adult kids and the youth organization." And then he's doing the same thing in Florida. So now it's, father and son in a different state, teaching kids how to play baseball, day in, day out. Some of them, they believe in you. Some of them, they believe in all the coaches. So I have a lot of respect for all the coaches that take the time and effort and dedication to pass along all the information and all the experience that they have. So I've been doing this since 2011.
Hey, I want to ask both of you, Harper and Vlad, are either one of you familiar with a man by the name of Terry Marks, who used to be the president of the Coca-Cola company, which is in Atlanta? And I know he did a lot of promotions with Coca-Cola at the old Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, and then the new stadium. I guess it was Turner Field. Was that which is the one now? Is it Turner Field now, or
no? They're Truist Field now.
Oh yeah, Okay,
Yeah.
Terry Marks. Does that name ring a bell with either one of you?
Well, my neighbor worked for Coca-Cola for 35 years, so I know that he would know him probably not only professionally but personally. But I don't know of him. How about you, Vlad?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. I just
I have friends that work for Coca-Cola for a long time, but
yeah, he's one of my best friends. He was the president CEO of Coca-Cola North America for a number of years. Very successful. And
the only I can say I visited a couple of times, and you get a taste of different Coca-Colas. So
he knows the secret. You know, there's only a handful of people.
Yeah, don't
But
don't
Terry played in the Giants organization a little bit. He's an athlete, and you know he took that athletic background that he had and he applied it to marketing and sales, and you know that sort of aggressive attitude that he had, and it bode him well and led him all the way to the top at Coca-Cola. So,
well, Vlad, what's your favorite flavor when you go there? Which one do you go back in line for?
I stick with the regular. I stick with the regular Coca-Cola. They got a lot, and I don't have time to taste all of it.
You're not a cherry Coke or vanilla Coke or Diet Coke or Coke Zero. You just give me the good stuff, right? Right.
I just go straight to it. That's it.
Did you have now? I know a buddy of mine. Does the name Kelly McGregor ring a bell with you at Colorado with the Rockies? He was the president of the Rockies. Kelly McGregor.
Yeah.
He was the president of the team. And he tells me, like, when Larry Walker was there, he'd walk by Larry's by in the locker room right next to where Larry was, and every player had a cooler, and it would have their favorite beverage in it, whatever that would be. And so, you know, we were kind of teasing about all the perks of major league players versus, let's say, what a football player would have, or, you know, hockey players. Some of the perks are pretty amazing. What was one of the? I mean, did you have to have yellow only M&Ms in your locker? Was there any specifics that you had, like David Lee Roth with Van Halen? Anything that you needed to have specifically in your locker room?
For me, it was like sneaker boards.
Okay.
Yeah, for some players, they were like Reese's. You know what I mean? It's just like the most interesting one that I witnessed. It was like Randy Johnson. Randy Johnson, he got a cooler in there that was like really good. They got a variation of stuff. But you couldn't go there.
We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at the good stuff.
But it's you know, that's cool. Everybody got some reference.
Now that you're done, have you visited with any former players to say, man, I always knew you would tip your pitches? Because Randy, who's the guy that's on ESPN, the Spanish-speaking former player, who's on the Sunday night broadcast?
Oh, yeah.
Please forgive me, I can't remember his name. I don't watch enough.
Yeah, I played in the big leagues. Yeah.
But he and Randy went. You know, they played against each other on numerous occasions, and I don't want to call him just the player. We'll just call him Pedro. And he walks over with his son, and he goes, "Son, I want you to meet the greatest left-handed pitcher in the history of the game. This is Randy Johnson." And Randy says hi to the son, and whatever. He goes, "Man, Randy says, I always had trouble with you. Your father could hit everything that I threw. I still don't know how he did it." And he goes, "Well, it's easy, Randy. You tipped your pitches." And Randy goes, "What are you talking about? Tip my pitch? I didn't tip my pitch." "Yeah, you did. When you had your glove open, I knew it was a fastball. When you close your glove and you put your hand in, your glove was closed, I knew you were going to throw me something other than a fastball. I knew it was a breaking ball. It was something different. And that's how I figured you out." Did anyone ever walk up to you and go, "Man, I knew exactly what you were going to throw every time"?
Not during my retired times.
Okay.
But when I make the team with the Braves, I asked that question to Chipper Jones. And I say, "Let me ask you a question. Why you and Andrew Jones like smile when you guys face me?" And they say it's because Vinny Castilla tell us to take a closer look at you. and I think we got him. And then we walked to the plate a lot of confidence, that knowing where you were going to throw. And I said,
Really?
that's why you guys smiled? And I say, yeah, because we pretty much like, no. And I said, okay, you got to go through like what I was doing. And I was like, when they give me the breakdown, I was like, oh my God, you guys are unbelievable. Even there's pressure on your face, they can see that.
Yeah.
Even if your face is like, when you throw a fastball and then you just change it for something like that to throw the breaking ball, they got that. And I was like, wow, interesting.
We had Brian Jordan on the show a while ago, and Brian tells the story of Chipper. They're both on the on-deck circle. Chipper's going to go bat. It's, warm-up pitcher, new inning. Right before he goes up, he grabs the towel, he taps his bat, puts a little pine tar on it, and he says to Brian, he goes, if he throws me a changeup, it's going to the moon. And he walks up to the plate, fastball, 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 and he strikes out on 3 pitches and he walks back. Brian says, man, the dude didn't even take the bat off his shoulder. He struck out. Next time he goes up 3 innings later, says the same thing to Brian. He goes, man, I'm telling you, if he throws me that changeup, it's going to the moon. 3rd pitch was a changeup. He hits it 420 feet. He circles. He comes home and he goes, I told you, right? And a high five. He's looking for 1 pitch, Vlad. That's all it was, 1 pitch. And
yeah, and then you just play with players that they smart like that. They're just so smart like that. And I would, my first impression was with Chipper when I played with him on the same team. I remember we went to San Diego one time, and then I say, hey, buddy, you're not gonna go outside to practice today? He was like, for what, Black? The guys that's pitching today, I got him. And I'm like, what do you mean? I go like, I got him. We normally play the video of the guy pitching in the clubhouse. And if you want to sit on the couch and watch him pitch the previous outing or whatever, you can. He said, nah, I'm not going to go out take practice and take swings, you know what I mean? Because I know that I'm just going to go deep on my first at bat because I know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
I know how he pitches. You all go back to the bullpen and wait for the ball. And I was like, we were just in the bullpen, just standing in there, Eddie Perez and everybody standing in there waiting for Chipper's ball.
Yep.
And then there she comes. I was like, that's like, that's one of the times that I said, no, you're a baseball player, man.
Yeah, that's
you're a baseball player. It doesn't matter if I go right-handed or I go left-handed. I'm going deep, Black.
I'm going yard. Yeah.
It's a difficult game for most of us, but there are some savants of the game who they're just born to play it. It just comes easy to them. I mean, George Brett, like Buddy was talking about last week, he didn't know how to hit. He was just a great hitter. And he just would, there's just people like that.
And that's even for the perspective. Okay, so he's bringing his leg 2 inches higher when it's fastball and 2 inches lower when it's breaking ball. Or he slows down his technique, or they're always looking for something,
right?
And until they figure you out.
And well, of course, if you play in the league long enough and you face these guys, and Harper, you're looking at that in football. You're looking at is the linebacker, how's he lining up, or the guy opposite you, is he clawing the grass or not, or is his knuckles hitting the grass, depending upon how's he gonna do the rush. These are all the little techniques of professional sports that happen when you play a long time and you face the same people. And, it becomes a science because it's everybody's good. Everybody comes out of, their high schools and their colleges with talent. And then it becomes who's really going to work at this game and who's going to play the mental game, because the mental game is how all sports are won. It's no question about that.
All right, I'm going to share the last story with you guys before I have to run out, but I got kids waiting for me.
Yes.
National League, the pitcher hits, right?
Yep.
I'm a struggle because they throwing 90 plus. That's hard to adjust as a pitcher. But throughout the years, you got pitchers that can rake. You know what I mean? You got pitchers that can swing. And I was one of the guys that I was like, I'm in the starting rotation, and then every time that I go to the plate, it's like a strikeout or a ground ball or broken bat or something. So I talked to a couple of players, and I said, hey, can you all help me how to hit? I don't know, my swing is too long. I'm reacting late or something. It goes like, hey, Vlad, listen, man. You want to learn how to hit, you got to make it simple. The hitting techniques here in America is completely different. It's eye coordination, reaction, quick hands. It's not overpowering and then, you know what I mean? It's overstriding and then try to kill the ball. That's not how it works. And I say, okay, break it down and teach me how to slow down. I just want to hit. And then I went to the cages, as a pitcher with Danny Bautista in the Marlins organization and with the Diamondbacks. And then they say, work on it and you see. Because I just want to hit one out.
Yep.
But, it's two forces. One is aggressive. The other one got to be aggressive, but it has to have discipline and patience. You need to know how to do that.
Right.
You can't move too much. It's a reaction. That's what I was very impressed about Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds just stay there and he throw the hands to the ball and turn, that ball is gone. He was not fishing for anything like that. And I was like, okay. So I did it. And I did it against a guy called, his name is Matt Clemens.
Okay.
And then he threw me 3 sliders in a row. That third one didn't do anything. And I take it deep.
Did you?
Nice. Yeah, I take it deep, but I violated the rules.
What?
I violated the rules. I got first and second. No out. So I skipped the sign. I skipped the bunt sign. I just want to hit. And I'll pay a fine after the game. I'm not going to tell you how much that fine was, but it's in the big leagues. So I went deep, 3 RBIs. And then at the end of the year, I got into an argument with Luis Castillo. You remember Luis Castillo?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if it was Luis Castillo or Mike Lowe. I don't remember which one it was. I know they finished with 99 RBIs. And I take the RBIs from them.
Killed his RBI.
Because I'm supposed to run the guys over.
Yeah.
For them.
Right. Yeah.
So I got 3 RBIs and 1 home run.
Yeah.
That's literally what happened. But I paid the fine. I literally paid the fine. I say, okay, I'm sorry I missed the sign, but I pretended that I didn't. I pretended that I didn't see the indicator.
Yeah.
And I went for it.
And you got one. Hey, did you run faster than Bartolo Colon?
No. I take like 3 days around the bases because I want to make sure that my feet were coordinated enough so I don't miss a base.
No, you're not going to trip. You're not going to do anything goofy.
And I didn't get no high five either. The first base coach didn't tell me anything. Third base coach, it was mad.
They ghosted you in the dugout.
I sit in the dugout. I put my jacket on because I was preaching. And I was like, okay, I just hit a 3-run jog. And then nobody said nothing to me. I'm just going to continue to pitch. And they give me the silent treatment. I find out it was because, you know what I mean?
You missed the signal. Oh my God! Yeah, that's like
$5,000.
That cost you $5,000 or whatever.
I saw this.
I thought you were giving me the sign of the cross. Come on.
I saw when I saw this.
That's hit.
I was like, yeah, but we can give you this, but we can come back. And I was like, oh my God.
Vaya con Dios.
That was literally what happened. So
Well,
Well, I
Vlad, we'd
was
love to
like,
have.
you know what I mean? It's just, it was like, it's just, I'm very thankful for you guys for having me. If you want to do a part
Thank you.
two, we can do a part two. It's okay. Not a
You
problem. As long as I can share some things about my life with the world,
Absolutely.
that's the most important thing.
Yeah, we didn't even get into what you're doing now and how you're affecting young kids and training and taking your expertise and passing it on to the next level. That can come again. But before we go, anything else from you, Steven? Because what a great time we've had with Vladimir today.
Well, you mentioned Barry Bonds, and he was the greatest athlete I've ever seen. I saw him up close and personal. I wrote a book about him. I knew him. I was in the locker room with him and saw how he conducted his business. And, when you're competing with people at that level, you're competing, as I mentioned, with the very, very, very best. And you were competing as a pitcher in the steroid era against a lot of guys who were pretty juiced up. Let's just face it. Bonds, Sosa, McGuire, Palmeiro. That was just the way it was. So you really had to fight for everything you could do out there, and you competed. And I'm so happy that you were on Take 5 with Steven Travers today. As I really mean that. I've interviewed a lot of baseball players, college players. Mark Pryor, who was a very smart pitcher, who's now a pitching coach. He really got into pitching as an intellectual and scientific endeavor. But this is the best interview that I've ever had, along with Harper, talking to a baseball player. So, Vladimir Núñez, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. So,
yep, and ours as well. So we'll end the show with a brief summary. As a 10-year-old, he wasn't playing baseball. The next thing you know, he's on the national team in Cuba, and he's in the major leagues. He's wearing a White Sox jersey and ends up getting to play for the Braves within a 24-hour period. And he hit the most costly home run that we can assume was several $1,000s, along with throwing a no-hitter and never leaving the bullpen. He's Vladimir Núñez. What a great interview we had with him. So we want to thank everybody for being a part of today's show. For Logan Landers, thank you, Logan. Did a fantastic job of finding all these great cards and pictures and players like Burt Campaneris wearing, yes, the ugliest uniform that I've ever seen in my life. And I swear by that's good to go. But anyway, so for Steven Travers, we want to thank Vladimir Núñez for being on the show. And obviously for Logan, thank you for being a part of 100 Yards of Football. This has been Take 5 with Steven Travers. So have a great day, everybody. We want to wish you well. And thank you for being a part of